200 photos of me sleeping. A man living in my attic for 8 months. A basement with 12 deadbolts locked from the outside. And I was the trespasser. 4 true trespassing cases, real police reports, real victims, and one of them is still unsolved. These aren't ghost stories. These are the ones that happen when you're awake, when you think you're safe, when you think you're alone. November 2023, Derek Hollis sets up a trail camera on his rural Montana property to catch the deer eating his garden. 3 weeks later, he checks the SD card expecting wildlife. Instead, he found 200 photos. All of them were of him, sleeping. Story 1. The trail camera discovery. Derek's hands were shaking so hard the cursor kept slipping off the file as photo number 197 filled his laptop screen. The timestamp in the corner read 3:47 a.m. and the angle was wrong, impossibly wrong, because it wasn't outside his house looking in. It was inside his bedroom looking down. The flash bleaching the blankets white and painting his sleeping face in stark detail like evidence. For a few seconds he couldn't breathe because at the very edge of the frame, near the foot of the bed, there was the suggestion of a silhouette, a human shape that didn't belong in his room, and the thought hit him with a cold clarity. Someone had been close enough to smell the air he exhaled. It started 3 weeks earlier when Derek hung a trail camera on a tree line behind his rural property, annoyed at whatever kept stripping his garden at night, expecting deer or raccoons, maybe a bear if he was unlucky. He forgot about it until a quiet Sunday, when he pulled the SD card and slid it into his computer like it was nothing. The first images were exactly what he'd expected. Branches, wind-blurred shadows, a fox. Until he reached a photo that didn't make sense. His bedroom window taken at night from a low angle, the curtains not fully closed, his own dim outline visible inside. He clicked forward and his stomach tightened as the window appeared again, then again, with different timestamps. 2:11 a.m., 3:02 a.m., 3:58 a.m. Like someone had turned his life into a schedule and the camera into a witness. The next shots were closer, the glass filling more of the frame, and on one night the window looked slightly ajar, not wide open, just enough to make him question whether he'd ever truly latched it. Derek told himself it was a trick of perspective, but he kept scrolling anyway because stopping would mean admitting what he already knew. Then the viewpoint changed, no longer from the tree line or the yard, but pressed tight to the window, as if the camera had been held in a hand, as if the person behind it had leaned in to listen. Derek's throat went dry when the photos stopped showing the window altogether and started showing the inside of his room. His dresser, the edge of his closet door, the corner of his bed. He flipped through them faster, pulse pounding, realizing the wildlife camera had been moved, taken down and put back up, used like a tool by someone who didn't want to be caught on doorbells or street cameras. The final stretch of photos looked like a countdown, closer to the bed, lower to the floor, steadier, as if the trespasser had grown comfortable, as if fear had been replaced by habit. And then there it was again, photo 197, his face asleep, the flash reflecting off his eyelids, the room too clear, too intimate, the kind of picture you only take when you're standing inside someone's life. Derek's finger hovered over the trackpad, and in the silence of his house he became aware of how loud the refrigerator sounded, how the walls creaked when they cooled, how vulnerable a home could be when you believed it was yours alone. He didn't review the rest. He couldn't. He grabbed his phone and called 911, but even as it rang, one thought kept drilling through every other. Whoever did this wasn't breaking in to steal. Whoever did this came back again and again just to prove they could. Story 2. The Attic Tenant. Amanda started recording the sound on her phone because nobody believed her anymore. Not her husband, not her sister, not even herself on the nights she lay awake counting the creaks above their bedroom and telling her brain to shut up. It always began the same way, 3-something in the morning. A slow drag like a shoe across plywood, then a soft thump as if someone had shifted their weight and decided to stand perfectly still. The house was old, sure, but old houses didn't learn schedules, and whatever was up there had a routine. Sunday nights were the worst, like it knew they'd both be home and too tired to check. At first it was small things she couldn't prove. A granola bar she swore she hadn't eaten. A half-empty case of water that should have lasted another week. The dog staring at the ceiling with his ears pinned back, growling so quietly it sounded like a motor idling. Then the electric bill jumped for no reason, and the Wi-Fi app showed an unknown device connecting at 2:48 a.m., disconnecting at 4:12 a.m., and doing it again the next night like it was clocking in. Amanda told herself it had to be a neighbor's phone, a glitch, anything, until she found the attic access panel in the hallway slightly bowed downward like someone had pressed on it from above. Her husband laughed and pulled down the ladder anyway, acting brave for both of them. But the first thing that hit Amanda wasn't fear. It was the smell. Stale sweat and damp fabric trapped too long in heat. The flashlight beam crawled over insulation and beams and forgotten boxes, then caught an extension cord snaking into a dark corner where it didn't belong. Her husband took one step forward and froze, and Amanda's stomach turned to ice because the corner wasn't empty. There was a mattress wedged between rafters, a pile of their own blankets, and a plastic tub full of food wrappers like someone had been living off the pieces of their week. And then the light, landed on the wall. Printed photos taped in a neat grid, not random, not messy. Photos of Amanda's kitchen, her back door, her kids on the couch, her husband asleep with his mouth slightly open, the angle too close, too inside. She didn't realize she was whispering no, 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 until something shifted behind the mattress. A face appeared where a face should never be, eyes reflecting the light like an animal's. And the man in the attic didn't flinch or scramble or beg. He smiled like he'd been caught sneaking cookies, not stealing a life. "Don't scream," he said softly, and his voice was calm in a way that made Amanda's blood run colder than panic ever could. "I know you take Sarah to soccer on Wednesdays. You leave at 4:15. You come back at 6:05. I'm always quiet." Her husband yanked Amanda backward so fast the ladder rattled, and they slammed the panel shut as if a piece of wood could seal away what had already seeped into their home. Amanda called the police with shaking hands. But while she waited, she stared at her living room, the couch, the family photos, the laundry basket, and realized the horror wasn't that a stranger had been above them. The horror was that he'd been close enough, long enough to stop feeling like a stranger at all. Story 3. The Deadbolts' Basement. Marcus heard the car door slam outside and felt the sound travel through the floorboards like a warning shot, because he was already down there, already trapped in the basement of the empty house, staring at a door that had 12 deadbolts running down its edge, all of them on his side now, all of them locked from the outside. The only light came from his phone, and it shook in his hand as he swept it across the concrete wall and saw the scratches, deep, frantic lines carved by fingernails or a broken key, forming words that made his mouth go dry. "He comes back every Tuesday. Today is Tuesday." For a second he couldn't remember how to breathe because the sentence didn't feel like writing. It felt like someone's last attempt to leave a piece of themselves behind. 3 hours earlier it had been a joke, a dare, easy money and cheap adrenaline. Break into the foreclosed place on Maple Street, take a photo in every room, prove you weren't scared of a dead house. The yard was overgrown, windows boarded like blind eyes, and the notice taped to the front door looked official enough that Marcus didn't question it. He just slipped around back, found the cracked basement window, and dropped into the dark with his friends laughing above him. The basement smelled like cold metal and wet dirt, and the first thing he saw was that steel door at the bottom of the stairs. Industrial hinges, thick frame, and an absurd number of locks like whoever installed them expected the world to try getting in, or something inside to try getting out. Marcus should have left right then, but his pride pushed him forward and he started sliding the deadbolts back one by one, counting them under his breath to prove he wasn't afraid. When the final lock clicked free and the door swung inward, the air changed. Warmer, lived in, and the beam of his flashlight landed on a room that shouldn't exist in an abandoned house. A made bed, with clean sheets, a mini fridge humming softly, bottled water lined up like someone had planned for time, and a nightstand holding a journal placed with the careful neatness of a person trying to stay sane. Marcus opened it and the first page hit him like a punch. A name he recognized from flyers on lampposts and the local news. A woman missing for years, the handwriting tight and desperate, the entries counting days like prison marks. He flipped faster, skimming until he found the line that made his stomach drop. He says if I'm quiet, I can have books. And suddenly the deadbolts weren't weird anymore. They were a system. Marcus tried his phone. No signal. He ran up the stairs anyway, clutching the journal like it was proof he hadn't imagined the room. And that's when the car pulled up and the front door opened above him, slow and unhurried, like whoever was coming in knew the house the way a person knows their own heartbeat. Marcus dove back down into the basement, not thinking, just reacting, because the footsteps crossed the living room and stopped right over his head, and then he heard it. The soft metallic slide of a bolt being set into place from the outside. One lock, then another. Then another. Each click was measured, patient, practiced. Until Marcus understood with a clarity that made him nauseous. Whoever owned this house didn't just expect someone to come down here. They had been waiting for it. And as the last deadbolt turned, the basement went quiet enough that Marcus could hear his own pulse pounding in his ears. Loud, panicked, and completely exposed. Story 4. The reverse trespasser. Vanessa didn't even have time to pretend she belonged there, because the coffee in her hand was still steaming, and the voice behind her was too calm to be a hallucination. "Don't move," the man said, not shouting, not panicking, like he was reading a note to himself. "You're on camera. All 6 times you've broken into my house." Vanessa turned slowly, heart punching at her ribs, and saw him framed in the kitchen doorway. Late 60s, steady posture, phone held up at chest level. Lens pointed at her like a badge. The Victorian had always looked abandoned from the street. Overgrown yard, peeling paint, a mailbox hanging by one screw. Exactly the kind of place urban explorers whispered about. The kind of place that made trespassing feel like archaeology instead of a crime. She'd been coming for months, slipping in through the side window, filming quiet walkthroughs for her followers, narrating how the dust made everything look frozen, in time. She'd even joked once that it felt like the house was waiting for someone to notice it. That morning, though, the air felt wrong the second she stepped inside. Less stale, less dead. And when she reached the kitchen, she found the proof. The dust on the counters wiped clean in long streaks, a sandwich half made on a plate, mail stacked neatly with yesterday's date showing, and a cup of coffee so fresh the surface still rippled when her shaking fingers brushed it. She should have run, but curiosity pinned her in place until the man spoke and the room seemed to shrink around the fact that she wasn't alone. "September 14th, he continued, voice flat and precise. 2:31 p.m. You came in through the side window. You took 47 photos. He tapped his phone once. October 3rd, 4:12 p.m. You brought a friend. Another tap. November 9th, you returned at 1:06 in the afternoon and you filmed yourself walking down my hallway. Vanessa's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Every memory of her smug little captions, abandoned, forgotten. No one lives here, turned sour and heavy in her throat. The man took one slow step forward and she noticed the small details she'd missed every other time. The discreet camera lens tucked into the corner of the ceiling, the fresh screws on the window frame, The way the floorboards that used to groan had been reinforced so someone could walk silently behind her if they wanted. "I travel for work," he said, still recording. "I leave it looking neglected on purpose. People like you don't respect doors unless they're shiny." Vanessa felt the word "you" hit like a verdict. She tried to back away, but the man's gaze didn't waver, and she realized the scariest part wasn't that she'd been caught. It was that she'd been studied. He hadn't found her by luck. He'd been waiting, collecting dates and timestamps the way hunters collect tracks, letting her return again and again until she built a case against herself with her own hands. "Do you know what changed everything?" he asked, and his calm finally cracked into something sharper. "You posted the outside of my house. You posted the street sign. You gave strangers my address." Vanessa's vision tunneled as she understood the twist she would never be able to edit out. In every video she made to prove she wasn't afraid, she had been the intruder the audience would hate, and the homeowner had been watching the entire time. Not from the dark, but from a screen, waiting for the day she'd walk in and pick up a cup of coffee that wasn't hers.